Welcome to another edition of Client Success Stories. I'm Coach Jackson, and I'm joined here by Rudy, a new inductee into the Action Jackson Fitness Hall of Fame. This guy's got some incredible numbers. In just 16 weeks, he lost 28 pounds, 14.4% body fat. He lost 32.7 pounds of fat and gained 4.5 pounds of muscle, all confirmed with the DEXA scan. These are mind-blowing, incredible numbers. Rudy, welcome to the program. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Rudy. I'm a small business owner in the San Francisco Bay Area and just got finished with the 4-month program.
Rudy, these are incredible numbers. Like I said, I mean, people who go through our program do really well. On average, lose about 18 pounds, 46% body fat, gain 1.5 pounds of muscle. And then there's you. And these are way above and beyond what most people tend to do in the program. So that's obviously why you're sitting here to share your story. So why don't you just kind of take me back to where you're at before the program and kind of tell me, where were you at physically, mentally, and kind of what was the driver or the reason why you wanted to join?
So last year I got a Tonal in the beginning of the year. My wife actually got it for me as a Christmas present. She had known I was interested in doing some strength training. I've never been to a gym before in my life, like really. I did a bunch of running. I did some cycling. I had worked with a nutritionist, but never any sort of personal trainer or a combination. So I got the Tonal, and that was going great. I was really enjoying using the Tonal, but I wasn't really seeing any sort of change. I was definitely probably getting stronger, but I still had a bunch of weight on me. I was eating okay, but there was I didn't feel like there was any rhyme or reason of like what I was eating with what I was doing in the exercise. So then for my birthday later in the year, again, my wife gets the credit. Zoe was like, she tried to get me a personal coach as a birthday present because she knew that I wasn't feeling great about my progress and that like I wanted to hit. And I have some trouble sometimes spending money on myself or like doing some things for myself. So she always hits it nail on the head. So she looked up some people and she's like, well, this is kind of a personal choice. And so she left some choices out. And I was like, I appreciate this. None of these people are what I'm looking for. It was like an app where you just send text messages to someone and they're just like checking in on your nutrition. And they're not really giving you the resources and the nutrition and your macros and your workouts and all these resources. And so I was like, I know what I want. And I went out, and looked for it and found you, basically. I think in one of the Tonal Facebook groups, I was asking for some recommendations and a million people poured in recommending you, basically. And I was like, yes, I want someone who knows Tonal, who can help me like pair the Tonal workouts and strength training for like really doing it seriously with all the habit changes, all the food, like everything else that goes into the nutrition and fitness.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, which is just pairing those things together, getting your training, getting your nutrition dialed in, making sure those complement one another and are going to work together. Because a lot of times people pick them and they say, oh, I'm going to do keto and then I'm going to do this muscle building program. And it's like, well, if you're doing a muscle building program, keto is probably not going to be the best choice. But they pick them as independent variables. They don't understand how they kind of need to kind of connect and integrate together and work together, right? So you want to make sure that those things are complementing one another and working together. That was awesome. So as we kind of go through this, I guess the next question would be, as you kind of like wanted to get started with this, you said you felt like you weren't seeing the success, you didn't have a plan, etc. Now, what was, the driver? Was there a specific moment that kind of was the trigger that was like, I need to do something about this? Was it just a slow kind of like over time, you kind of just getting to a breaking point? Like, I guess what was the straw, if there was one, that broke the camel's back that got you to say, yeah, I really need to do something about this?
Yeah, I've had some ups and downs on weight and fitness. And, I did something that was really dumb. Looking back on it a few years ago, it was one of these weight loss betting programs. And I don't know if you've heard of this concept, but you like have official weigh-ins in the app. And if you lose a certain percentage of just your straight weight, you basically are betting money and you get like they'll double your money or else you lose it if you don't hit it. And ever since I did that and I hit it. I'm all about some of the competition, and I hit the numbers, and I immediately rubber banded, gained all the weight back that I lost and more. It was like a 6 month thing to do this weight loss bet thing. And then within 4 months after the 6 months, I had gained all of it back and then more. And that was basically previous to last year, which sort of was like I'm going to get the tonal and try to double down again on nutrition. And similarly, this might be a bit more odd, but there's some like YouTubers, things that I follow that are like more into some of my hobbies, like nerds and whatnot. And like they did this big segment on them doing like a gym camp where basically they were getting in shape. And that sort of corresponded with me wanting to get the tonal and find a personal trainer. And that was kind of like, I guess, the inspiration to be like, these nerds are doing it. Overweight nerds. Like I can get in there and do it too. I need like the plan.
I love that. So I don't love obviously the rebounding and the other stuff, but I love the idea of nerds getting fit and getting in shape. And it's a common thing, right? So if you create a better competition like that, yeah, you're probably going to hit it if you're competitive and if you're somebody like yourself. But the downside is that do you lose or do you win the battle but lose the war, right? So yes, you accomplished your goal, but then you gained it all back. And if you go at this with an approach that's not sustainable and you lose the weight too fast, you're primed to rebound and to gain the weight back. What happens is that if you eat too few calories and you don't really change your habits, what happens is your metabolism lowers down, and it lowers down and lowers down and lowers down. And then when you finish, you hit your goal, you achieve your weight loss, whatever it is, typically people tend to then increase the number of calories that they eat. They go back to quote unquote eating normal again, or, they reward themselves because they just dieted for 6 months. So I'm going to go out for pizza. I'm going to have some beers. I'm going to have cake or cookies or whatever, because I deserve it. And their metabolism is now so low that eating any of those foods takes them above where their metabolic rate currently is into a caloric surplus. And then their weight goes up and goes up typically very rapidly. So that's kind of exactly what happened. And it's a huge risk if, again, you go about this with unsustainable strategies and you don't really focus on habit change, mindset change, understanding why you're doing these things, et cetera. And you don't have that education of, wow, now I understand how my metabolism is working, that it is getting lower, that I need to use reverse diets or whatever it is if I want to increase my calories. And that's obviously stuff that we teach you in the program, but you got to just have a little bit more of an insider view and a long-term approach to this if you want to see sustainable success. And we don't even like the word diet. We like, just shifting how you're eating from a lifestyle perspective is cliche and corny as that sounds, because it does work, and it's shown and been proven over large studies of people that that's the approach that's going to work. The next thing obviously is you mentioned like nerds getting fit, and again, I love that concept because as a former software engineer, as a computer science major and an econ major, like I spent most of my college years in the computer lab, so I love this. And anyone who's seen like photos of, I don't know, Jeff Bezos recently or Mark Zuckerberg, who's gotten ripped now, I mean, everybody's getting fit now. I mean, this is like, I feel like getting fit's being like, is like the new millionaire or something, or billionaire. So I love that concept. And I'm glad that you were exposed to that and that kind of spurred your interest and obviously led to us being here. So that's fantastic. Now, as you kind of got started in this, especially early on, it can feel like you're a fish out of water. It can be very cumbersome. It can be very uncomfortable at times. And those early stages are usually when people kind of tend to fall off, right? They get into it, they're all excited, and then a week or two in, too difficult, too hard, I'm done. How to just stick with it in the beginning when it was really challenging and it probably felt overwhelming, or did it feel overwhelming?
A couple things come to mind. Definitely the amount of sort of resources in the program and the best practices and like the ways to optimize. There's a lot. And so I think for me, there's this concept of min-maxing. Like I wanted to min-max my weight loss and fitness journey. And I was like, I want to do all these. So looking back, I could have paced myself on like the water, the supplements, the additional cardio or the workouts, all the measurement. There's a lot of stuff. And I'd like read everything and watched every one of the videos and all your resources. I was like, this is a lot. Maybe I should have paced myself. But I feel like the best part for sure is I'm a competitive person. So the sticking with it is like I immediately started to do the DEXA scans. And so like having my one before I started the program and doing one every month was a huge benchmark, to see the progress. I weighed myself every day. I logged my food every single day, unless it was like some business event or something where it would be a waste of my time to try to log in every single bite of something I had, but I tried my best. I just committed. There's this concept of some like treat meals and stuff in the program right away. And I didn't think about any of that. I didn't have a drink of alcohol until a month in. I was like, I'm just going to try to adhere to all the best practices and just hold on to it.
Fantastic. Well, obviously it worked, especially in the initial stages. So absolutely. And there is a lot of resources. We try to provide people all the resources they need. And part of this is I've joined a lot of different coaching programs in the past and done a lot of different things. And anytime I join a program or, part of me even starting my fitness business going way back is that I would buy these fitness programs that were online, in the early 2000s when I was still working as an engineer, and they were always just horrible. They were unorganized. They were crappy. They were incomplete. They didn't make sense. You were missing so many details or other resources and things. And I always thought to myself, gosh, I feel like I could do this so much better. And that was part of the reason why I ended up getting into fitness and going down this route. But I always want to make sure that people have all the resources that they need, that there's no excuses from a resource perspective and they have everything that they need. So yes, we do have a lot of resources, but we try to organize them as best we can. And we're going through a restructuring process now, but organizing them and kind of making sure that we give people that resource when they need it. So while we have, a database or a catalog of resources, it's like, don't stress or worry about all of these yet, but watch this video right now. And then you get to another point where something happens, like watch this video right now. It's the information we try to give you that you need when you in fact need that information that I find helpful. So that's just a little touching on some of the resources in the program. And the next thing you mentioned, obviously, is you committed super hard right out the gate. You went hard. And I love that approach. And a lot of people that go through the program do this approach. And there's a couple of reasons why. It's not because we want to be mean. It's not because we want you to never touch a drop of alcohol again or never have any food that has sugar or any of your favorite foods ever again. It's because we want to abstain for a short period of time to, number one, yes, maximize results in the beginning and really build that momentum, because when you see results early, it's going to help you get excited. It's going to trigger that momentum. It's going to build that trust in us and also yourself that you can do this, because so many people that have gone through other programs say, I don't know if I can do this, Jackson. I'm kind of scared, or I have this fear, or it's never worked before. And then when they start seeing results early on, they get really excited about it. So part of it's a psychology thing. So that's why we want people to go so hard in the beginning. But also another reason is because we want people to kind of develop their own relationship with alcohol, with sugar, with all these kinds of other foods. And we want people to have the relationship that they want. And the only way to have that is to sometimes step back from it. Like I quit cupcakes for an entire year. A lot of people know this. And I quit cupcakes for a year because I was listening to this actual Ryan Holiday video, and he's a great author. He's written The Obstacle is the Way, which is one of my favorite books. And he said, does the habit have you, or do you have the habit? And I remember hearing that, and it really hit me, because I thought to myself, I have this habit of eating cupcakes on the weekend. And I was like, I feel like the habit has me. I don't own the habit. Like, it's got me, and it's kind of the tail's wagging the dog here. And so I just decided, not that I was going to quit for a year, but that I was going to quit for a month. And I was like, 1 month, no cupcakes. That's it, to make sure that I can control this. And I went 1 month, and it ended up becoming a year. It was just like, I just didn't feel like I needed them. I just was like, just didn't have a desire after that first month, which was kind of fascinating. And And that's one of the reasons why we want people to kind of go all in the beginning, is because when people go to social events or they do things, they just drink out of habit. And it's like, we want you to have a relationship with alcohol that you want to have on your terms, not just drinking because that's what you do, or because you're just programmed to do it from television and movies and TV and other things. So that's kind of why we do it. But as you've kind of gone through the program, how have you been able to incorporate those things back into your life, if at all, and kind of what's that been like?
I remember telling you about this, but the 1 month in was a best friend's like bachelor party back in Boston, a bunch of college friends. And actually going there, I drank nearly nowhere as much as I would have. Like I had a headache fairly early in the nights. I was like, what am I doing? So kind of similar to the cupcake thing. It's like, I started to just not crave it. Like I was used to having a beer, like a heavy IPA after dinner. Now thinking about that in macros and calories, I'm like, geez, that's a lot of calories in that hazy IPA that I like drinking. So now it's kind of like, it's a treat. And there's, I guess my favorite food, generally speaking, is like a thing too, is bread. So I haven't had bread at all, but between you and some recommendations in the Facebook group, there's all these other alternatives that maybe don't taste as great as the original thing. But I've now, I just wrote up a Google Doc of a bunch of the things I've been eating for a friend of mine that was really curious. Obviously, lots of people see the transformation, the shedding, and also building of muscle. And I was like, what are you doing? I just saw you a couple months ago. So I made this doc and I was like, there's so many things that I have found that are close enough to the thing that I liked to have before that brings some comfort, but it's so much healthier, more protein focused. And I just have a couple of those a week and I feel more than happy. I had a breakfast sandwich in the afternoon today using one of those Better bagels, the protein bagels. And that was an amazing snack. I felt like I should have been treating, but it just fits in my macros. So it's like, it's totally fine. I didn't do anything wrong, I can just feel good about it.
Wow. That's a really important point out there, is because a lot of people think, oh, healthy food, it's going to be boring. It's not going to be fun. I'm not going to like it. It's not going to taste good. I'll never be able to do this long term, because the first time they eat, whether it's chicken and broccoli or something, it does taste not good to them. But you have to kind of learn and kind of, number one, you have to train your taste buds. But number two, you have to learn how to make it taste good, because there are seasonings, there's ways of going about this, there's recipes, there's other things that you can incorporate that will make it taste fantastic and amazing. I eat so many things that are, quote unquote healthy, that I think, gosh, this is like, I crave this. I can't wait to have it. Whether it's my, egg white and turkey bacon, sandwich that I have, which is awesome. The everything, I think it's the Better bagel. The everything one, toasting one of those up. I mean, just fantastic. There's those new Viking waffles that I've tried before, which are amazing as well. Like, there's just so many alternatives now. And I think Quest was really the first company that kind of went on this quest to build, a better protein bar that just tasted amazing and didn't have all the sugar and all the crap in it. And ever since then, not saying Quest is necessarily the healthiest thing in the world ever, but ever since then, there's been this huge explosion of companies that have come out with alternatives to all of these things. And most of the time, you can find something that scratches the itch really well. It might not be exactly, but over time, you'll actually probably like that thing better. And then all of a sudden, you'll stop eating the other thing. Like cupcakes, for example. I think I've had one in maybe 18 months or something now. It's just not something I crave or seek out anymore. And the one I had, I was like, whoa, this is so much sugar. This is too much sugar even. And it's not that if I was at a friend's birthday or if it was my birthday and somebody had one, I wouldn't have one. I would, but it's just not something I seek out or go for. Even getting dessert after dinner, me and my wife rarely do. If we do, we'll often split it. And it's usually only if it's like a group setting or something. And now oftentimes we kind of crave and we're like, let's go home and have dessert at home, because we have our So Delicious ice cream bars that are like 100 calories that taste amazing. Or we have some Enlightened bars, which are great, or Yasso bars. There's just so many things out there now that can scratch the itch and do really well with a fraction of the calories. And oftentimes that's just going to make you feel better. You're not going to have the shame, the regret, and all those feelings. And sort of an underrated thing is how do you sort of manage to appease both the short-term version of yourself and the long-term version of yourself, so that the short-term version of yourself is like, hey, I'm happy, but also the long-term version is happy. And so often we will prioritize the short-term version. We'll eat all the food, drink the drinks, do all the stuff. And it's like short-term, yes, I feel amazing. Long-term, okay, now my weight's up. Now I don't feel good about myself. My energy's low. I have brain fog. I didn't sleep well. I feel bloated or whatever. My clothes don't fit. Well, that stinks. But how do you manage both of those things? And oftentimes it's, to your point, finding a healthier alternative for a fraction of the calories that can scratch that itch. So thank you for bringing that up. Now, as you've kind of gone through the program, you found these healthy alternatives. You mentioned, though, people seeing you and saying, whoa, look at you. What have you been doing? What's that like?
It's, of course, reaffirming. And I'm the 5 love languages. I'm a words of affirmation kind of guy. So like, I appreciate the compliments and whatnot. People acknowledging like that must have been put in a ton of effort. But because it's such a transformation in 4 months, like there's lots of people that I saw right in month 1 that I just saw in the past couple of months who are like, and it's kind of nowadays too, people want to be kind of sensitive about, they don't just want to say that I look lighter. You never know what someone's going through or what's going on or what's the motivation is behind some of it. But, lots of people might be like, you look fit. And that's like a really nice way, for people to put it. A couple of people are like, they're like, not just that I lost weight, but some people are like, are there some guns under there? Like, I was just at a dinner event last week and someone's like, it was like, you don't just look, you look, people do the thing about my shoulders and they're like, are you? I'm like, yeah, I've been lifting. I've been doing this whole program. It's hard to sum it all up in a nice couple sentences, but without diving into telling everything about what I've been doing in your program for the past 4 months. But I get so excited talking about it to people. And they get excited about it too. So it's kind of great. I gave a lunch and learn to my company, basically, that just was like a little bit of a summary. It had a bunch of photos of me over the past decade and the various things I was talking about, the weight loss bedding and the stuff and like my journey. And then a little bit about what I've been doing in the program. And it's like inspired a whole, people are sharing some of like what they've been doing for healthy food alternatives in our Slack channel at work. And, some people have been trying some different habit changes. So in some way it feels like it's, when I start to talk about it, I get some more actual value back from people too. They start to share what they're doing or what they heard about and they get excited.
Wow, this is incredible. You hadn't told me this and now I'm getting so excited because to a point, right? The student has now become the teacher and the master. So now you're teaching other people. And this is another one of those kind of underrated things that people don't really think about. But once you kind of start to acquire a skill and you start to get really good at something, like obviously you're really good now at weight loss and building muscle and transforming yourself, you know how to do it. And certainly you can advise other people now how to do it. And the cool thing about that is that when you teach it to somebody else, it reaffirms your identity around it, but it also enhances your knowledge and your skill. Because now you have to get clarity on your thoughts. How did I do that? What was I thinking about in that moment? What is the thing that I'm eating? How many calories am I eating? What was that meal that I had, right? What was exactly that workout? What was happening there? So you enhance your knowledge, your skills, and you reaffirm your identity as somebody who does that thing, somebody who doesn't skip workouts, somebody that is healthy and fit. And if you identify like that, if you have that sort of mindset, boy, that's extremely powerful, extraordinarily powerful. I'm reading a book right now called The Expectation Effect, and the author is just going on and on about all these different studies, some of which I had read about in other books, whether it was Mindset by Carol Dweck or Upside of Stress, which is a great book as well, or a few other books. But the author is just going on and on about all these different studies where just people's expectation of things can dramatically shift the results from it. Meaning, and we talk about this in the program, like if you're eating chicken and broccoli and you're saying this is never going to fill me up, guess what? It's just not going to. It's not going to fill you up. Or if you're somebody that thinks, this is never going to work for me, guess what? It's not. So not only do we have to get the training and the nutrition right, but we also have to get that mindset right. We have to get that shift in identity. And when you teach to other people, boy, it reinforces that a lot, really incredibly well. So this is exciting, Rudy. I'm so stoked about this because again, we often say the journey matters more than you think, and you're inspiring other people. Now you're teaching other people. Wow, I'm blown away. So this is incredible. What does it feel like, I guess, to be teaching other people now and to see other people kind of taking action, which is awesome.
Yeah. And to be clear, it's like, here's roughly what I'm doing, but, for what should work for you is something you should maybe go work with someone on that knows this. I was like, I know what was working for me. But it's like, how exactly do we build the workouts and get to the macros and all the resources? And there's still a lot of like the science around the fitness that if you talk to someone that feels very strongly about this, they might disagree with what you're doing. So it's kind of a touchy, but it feels great.
But sharing your perspective alone is going to give them insights to at least oftentimes get them started, right? Because people usually don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. Now, certainly, like in this program, obviously you went from where you're at to incredible transformation. But again, you didn't start overnight. You had gotten the tonal previously. You started doing some strength training. You'd done this other thing previously. So like there were a lot of other little steps that you had along the way that were kind of building to the point where then you just hockey sticked it by working with, an expert and getting all this done. So for these people, they might be at a different point in their journey and they might be just starting. And something that you share, like a recipe or something that they change, could be the thing that gets them to lose 5 or 10 pounds in the next, month or two or whatever, or 3 months. And that could be something where they're like, oh, wow, maybe this could work for me. Maybe I could lose some weight. Holy cow, this does taste really good. Or maybe this tastes just as good or better, or, this is a great alternative to what I was doing previously. That could begin them on the journey. You just never know. And again, that's a really powerful thing. So don't underestimate the value of sharing your experience. Now, we're being clear. You're not coaching these people and telling them, here's a program, but by sharing your experience, it's showing them that it's possible. It's showing them very clearly, kind of, again, the details of what you did, and it's giving them insights to other things that they might try or take action on, which could potentially lead to them having an incredible transformation down the road.
Yeah. There's a couple of people that seem a little bit more serious. I send them your website. that's like, here's my coach, check him out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So what were some of the other obstacles that you might have faced along the way? And I guess, how did you overcome those? Whether there's one or two that sort of stand out in your mind?
One for sure that stands out is getting the macros really dialed in. I feel like every week I sort of improved where, by month 3, 4, like I'm hitting the calories and the grams like on the head, like every week. And it took a lot to get there. Like at first I tried a meal prep service and I thought, oh, this will be great. Like it'll help me. But it was kind of difficult because the first few weeks, the first month, the macros are quite a bit different. They flip flop. And I think it's maybe a little bit harder to get a meal prep service that would really work well for the more like totally low carb focus first few weeks. And then it changes. And I just started to get in the groove of like plan out my meals on MyFitnessPal the night before, have everything dialed in with maybe some room for snacks that I could at least choose from like the healthy, maybe protein focused snacks that I got in the kitchen. I found a meal prep service that works for me really well. And a couple of things dawned on me, like, I'm trying to look for a meal from the meal prep service where essentially it's like 1 gram of protein to 10 calories. There's sort of like these sort of things that I just start to, and then I did that, but then that worked out well. But then I was like, oh, well, sometimes those still could be high carb or low carb or high fat or low fat. And just because it's got the protein doesn't mean there's some sort of other sauce or what veggies are in there. And so it was just like an evolution of dialing that in over time. And it was nice now that my wife Zoe's in the program because like I can immediately help. I was immediately like helping with the meal prep things. I know it just took me a bit to really understand how to think about looking at like the nutritional facts, and that's been huge at this point. And now it's just like there's no pain. There's not a ton of mental effort that has to go into the macro like juggling gymnastics. It's just gotten to be a habit now, and I just continue to do MyFitnessPal every day.
I love that. And that's a sneaky underrated kind of tip you just threw in there. So just to point it out so people listening catch it, what you just shared. You said 1 gram of protein for every 10 calories. So I do the exact same thing for my meals. So I also use a meal prep delivery service for 2 of my meals every day. I make one other, and then I have like 1 or 2 snacks. And 50 grams of protein, roughly 500 calories is what I'm selecting from a meal on a per meal basis. So that's a great rule of thumb that you can use. Again, it's not specific to any particular person, but as a general rule of thumb, that's something to look for in your meals, is about 1 gram of protein per 10 calories. That's a great rule. So that's fantastic. And the other thing you mentioned is like, yeah, it was a little challenging in the beginning, but people think that just because they've been eating for like, I don't know, all their life, that somehow if they start tracking their food or trying to, dial things in a little bit more, that they're just going to be good at it right away out the gate. And it's like, that's just a false belief. And it doesn't serve you. And it's just not true. Anything that anybody's ever tried in the beginning, oftentimes we're very bad at in the beginning. You have to be willing to be bad at something to get good at it. That's just the way it is. The first time I worked out, guess what? I wasn't very good at it, and I had to learn, I had to improve, I had to adjust. First time I tracked my food, I wasn't very good at it. Same thing. I had to improve and adjust. And now, just like you, I can do it in its second nature. The first time I did an interview like this, if I go back and listen to the first one I did, it's pretty bad. I interrupt the guests constantly when they're talking. Like you were just talking, I would just interrupt and I'd be like, yeah, exactly. Wow, cool. Yeah. And I would just be talking over you, essentially, just totally screwing up the interview. It didn't make any sense. When I look back, I'm like, what was I doing? But I just didn't know any better. I was kind of nervous. I had, tics. I hadn't experienced this before. I hadn't done it. I hadn't watched myself and learned. I hadn't hired coaches to help me be better on camera. So of course I wasn't great at it. That's should be expected. So when you're getting started with this, if you're tracking food or even tracking portions or trying to keep a food journal or any of these things at first, guess what? You're not going to be very good at it at first, and that's totally okay. That's fine. That's actually very normal. But the key is can you stick with it with just a high enough consistency so that you can get to the other side and start to build that skill, get pretty good at it, and then all of a sudden it becomes second nature. And then you either learn your portions so well in your meals and go-to meals, et cetera, that you don't have to track anymore, but now you have that skill in your back pocket if you do ever need it, or you just get so good at it that you just keep doing it and you like it. So that's, again, just a really important point to make for people at home. If you're getting started, you're not going to be good. That's okay. Just stick with it. And another thing that you mentioned, planning your meals the day before, especially early on when you're trying to learn how to do this. Gosh, that's important, because then it gives you basically a playbook, almost like a script, right? An instruction manual to execute the next day. So now you're not trying to figure things out, as you're going through them. The analogy I like to use is Tom Brady doesn't get the playbook, right, the day of the game and try to learn the playbook and execute the game all at the same time. He knows the plays ahead of time so that when he gets to game day, he could then execute them. So by kind of creating a playbook a day prior, well, now you can just follow the instructions, and it might not be perfect and you might make adjustments, but at least you have a plan. Like every day I time block my time. I don't stick to the plan every single day all the time. Sometimes I make adjustments, but I start with a plan, right? General Eisenhower, I believe he said, hopefully I'm not going to butcher this quote, but he said something along the lines of no battle was ever won according to plan, but no battle was ever won without a plan either. So there's so much value in creating that, even if you don't necessarily stick to it perfectly and you adjust. So thank you for mentioning that as well. I guess any other kind of insights, breakthroughs, things that you want to share as you kind of gotten to the other side of the program now?
There's just one other thing that sticks out to me, because I was putting I put a big emphasis on the DEXA scans as these milestones at the end of each phase. And a thing I didn't really learn or realize until a few months in is that there's a lot about the consistency to doing the DEXA scans that make the results meaningful, like making sure that you maybe take it at the same time of the day, you don't work out, you have eaten or drank the same amount before each one. It's actually quite finicky, and I didn't realize. So my first few, I didn't really, I saw my muscle mass fluctuate a bunch. You know, I think you and Coach Emily have posted about it in the Facebook group that maybe you shouldn't put so much, you know, stock into exactly what the DEXA scan is saying, especially on the muscle mass. Like, how can you really lose that amount of muscle in a month? You can't. But there's a lot of other variables. If that is like one of the good measurements you're trying to really use is to measure progress. And I didn't kind of just figure that out until further in. And I would like one thing would be to go back and be a bit more regimented about that to have some better markers throughout the program.
Absolutely. So that's a great point, which is just number one, I think you need a tracking mechanism, right? If you don't have any tracking mechanism right now, you're probably going to fail. And everything aside, tracking your progress is so important, because if you're tracking your macros and you're tracking your workouts or doing all that, that's great. And that's very helpful, of course, but you have to have a way of tracking your progress. Otherwise, you're probably not going to stick to it, because most of us like to see those numbers improve. They want to see that improvement. And if you're just looking at yourself in the mirror and stepping on the scale occasionally, it's just not going to be enough. So you have some metrics, some way of tracking. Now, we like to recommend obviously doing weight, body fat, progress photos, and body measurements. And then, you know, if you want to kind of formalize that a bit more, getting a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan is the gold standard. It's the best thing that we have, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. Nothing, and this is really hard to wrap your mind around, but almost nothing that we're doing is going to be entirely perfect. This is something that perfectionists kind of tend to really struggle with, but none of this stuff is perfect, right? A label isn't perfect on food. When you're tracking, it's not always going to be perfect. The workouts aren't always perfect, but that doesn't mean you can't make a ton of progress. And just because it's not perfect doesn't mean it's not worth doing either. So DEXA scans aren't perfect, but that's again where we need to try to keep the variables as close as possible to being the same. And this is no different than a scale. If you get on a scale in the morning every day at the same time, you're going to have a consistency in measurement. Doesn't mean the weight's not going to ever fluctuate at all, but it means you have good consistency there, and it shouldn't fluctuate that much. But if you take your weight sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes after a meal, sometimes before a meal, sometimes after a workout, sometimes after hydrating and eating all your food for the day, that number is going to bounce around a hell of a lot, and it's going to be really frustrating, and it's going to be probably more trouble than it's worth. So you want consistency there. So if you're doing DEXA scans, great. Schedule them at regular intervals and then try to limit the variables to what you said. You want to either, if you work out the first time before it, work out the second time before it, but ideally don't work out before it. Try to eat the same amount of food, if at all. Drink the same things. You want to just keep all the variables the same. What I would recommend is go first thing in the morning if you can, after drinking a little bit of water, but also not eating, and just limiting as many variables as possible. That way, every time you do it, we should see more consistency with the numbers. And then that puts a little bit more stock, if you will, or puts a little bit more emphasis on those numbers, feeling that they're probably fairly a little bit more accurate. Because if you're really hydrated one time that you do it and then dehydrated the next time, it could show a loss of lean mass or lean tissue, and that could be really frustrating. But you have to then kind of go through and say, oh, well, what happened there? Oh, well, I was really dehydrated. That probably impacted the measurement a little bit. But clearly the DEXA scans worked well because they can be the carrot or the stick, right? They can be motivating and inspiring and get you to move forward, but then they also can be the stick that kind of gets you to go forward and kind of do what you need to do if you're not seeing the results. How did tracking progress and specifically the DEXA scan kind of, I guess, help you along your journey?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm doing it every month. So, halfway through the month, it's like, oh, my DEXA scan's in 2 weeks. My DEXA scan's in a week. My DEXA scan's in a few days. It's like, I'm not going to mess this up. I want a good scan. I want a good weigh in. And so certainly having that was this motivating force ongoing to be like, well, I'm at this business event, I could have a glass of wine here, or maybe it's a dinner thing. And it's like, I'm going to not have that dessert. I'm going to not have that beer or glass of wine because my DEXA scan's in a few days. So there's certainly, I think, just to your point, it was a major motivating factor. And I was excited to share the results. Like, I send them to you every time I get them, shared them with some friends and family, maybe shared the result with the team. The place that I go to gives you a letter grade. So I enjoyed trying to like improve a half letter grade for every scan. That was my goal. I think I went from, it was like a B minus or maybe a C plus to the end. I was like an A minus or a B plus or something like that. So it was like every scan I wanted to get up. So it was kind of also, I wanted to share a good result. I wanted to post in the Facebook group and the community my results, and I wanted a good showing. So some social, I guess, commitment there, that I maybe put on myself in a way, but I think in a good way to reinforce good behavior, good habits.
Essentially what you're doing is taking advantage of urgency, right? Which is when people are sort of left to their own devices, they're going to take whatever the default option is, which is usually doing nothing. And that's kind of the way people do things. They've learned this in studies where they'll do a study with a 401k, and whatever the default option is for the 401k, that's usually what people select, right? Most people are not organ donors. Why? Because the default option is to not be an organ donor. Other countries have changed that and make the default to be an organ donor. So guess what? People donate organs in that country very frequently because that's the default option. So people usually need a reason to do things, an urgency, a push, something, and some sort of deadline like having a DEXA scan in 2 weeks can really help with that. So that's a way of creating an artificial deadline, some urgency, and then creating that fire under your butt that you need to do the things that you need to do. Because again, left to our own devices, a lot of times we're just not going to do things. Even if the deadline is somewhat arbitrary, it can be really exciting and sort of motivating, and it can drive you to do the things that you need to do. And if that's the goal you want to accomplish and what you want to achieve, however you get there, I mean, is useful, even if it's a somewhat arbitrary deadline. And obviously it clearly worked. But also when you get the results, if they are positive, as I mentioned, boy, that could be a big driver, because it's like, yes, it's working. Holy cow, I can do this. Well, if this worked, what else can I do? What if I, add in that extra workout that I haven't been doing or whatever? That's really, really inspiring and exciting. So wow. I want to just take a moment here as we kind of wrap up and to just say thank you to you, not only for doing this, which really means a lot to me. Just anytime anyone's coming on to these things and willing to share their experience, it really touches me, because it just means a lot. Like, you trusted me, invested in yourself. You put in so much hard work. I know this isn't easy, but damn, I know it's worth it. And I just get so excited when I see how excited you are about the transformation you made. And then you telling me for the first time about you teaching other people. Gosh, that's just, wow. That's exciting. That's inspiring. I mean, I'm excited. I can't say the word excited enough. I'm so excited just listening to you, because it just gets me so pumped, and it gets me, just feeling like, wow, how many more clients can we change? How many more people's lives can we help? So it's kind of funny how this feedback happens, and it's almost like this flywheel, this cycle of, you're seeing results, you're getting excited, you're telling other people about it. I'm seeing how happy and how wonderful your transformation is. And then I'm getting more excited and thinking to myself, wow, am I selling myself too short? Can we take on more clients? Can we help more people? What else can we do? So, I mean, this is incredibly motivating for me as well. So thank you. And it just means, again, so much to me. It really does. You put in a tremendous amount of hard work. You earned all the success. And I'm just so grateful and thankful that I had the honor and the privilege to coach you. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. I appreciate all the guidance, the program, the direction. I mean, my health life trajectory, is definitely on is major altered after the past 4 months. We're still continuing together in the legacy program, working on now getting some muscle after cutting all the weight.
Absolutely. Any last final words for people out there who are listening? Breakthroughs, insights, tips, tricks, anything that comes to mind that you want to share that maybe you didn't?
I mean, I would just say that there's a period of time where, I feel like every weight loss thing I did or exercise thing I did, and then I rubber band back, it was harder to do the next one. It really felt it was harder. And so, this time around, I think it was like working with someone like you, where there's clearly the blueprint, there's the plan, and I can follow instructions well. And so, if someone out there is hesitant or is not sure if it'll work, it for sure will work if you just follow the plan and commit to it 100%. And even if you do it 80%, I mean, you're still gonna have crazy results. So I'd say like don't put it off for your health. Get it done.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you are right. And it's super unfortunate. This is the unfortunate reality of the world from a health and fitness perspective, which is every time you gain and lose that 10 pounds or you do another diet or whatever, it becomes harder every single time. And that's your body's defense mechanisms kind of raising, right, their awareness and saying, whoa, we don't want to do this again, and fighting against you, trying to prevent you from losing that weight again. And that is just the reality. And that's why we want you to join the program. We want you to get great results, but we want to come up with a way that's more sustainable for you doing it so that you're not bouncing up and down all over the place, for the rest of your life. We want you to lose the weight and keep it off with a sustainable strategy that allows you to eat your favorite foods, still drink alcohol from time to time, and do all these things in moderation, which is the key. And if you can do that, then you lose the weight, you keep it off, you're happy, and you're not yo-yoing up and down, for the rest of your life, which is really difficult. And another underrated kind of thing to throw in there is the importance of, as we're kind of switching, your programming to try to add a little bit more muscle and change to more hypertrophy programming, we're going to be very careful and cautious with the diet, because what we don't want to do is then add in tons of calories immediately off the bat and then again have that rebound, because your body's in a vulnerable position right now. And what we're trying to do is reestablish a new set point, this new set point at this new weight, because the longer time we spend here, the more likely it is that your body is going to want to stay here. And that's really important, because then we can make it so easy for you to stay at this current body fat, right? Which is really a beautiful thing. So a bit of a maintenance phase almost from especially a dietary perspective after you lose a bunch of weight is, I think, something that people should spend a little bit more time on and in. So thank you again, Rudy. You've given so much knowledge and information, and I think the insights and the breakthroughs and just sharing your journey is going to be really helpful for people out there. So thank you for doing this. Again, I appreciate you. And you said it yourself at the end there, action is the difference. So take action today, and we'll see you in the next one.